Can Brian give some tips on pen hold / nib positioning for optimal line variation when using a stub or italic nib? Well, I love stub nibs, so I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. I don't have like a great way to kind of visually show this to you right now. If I had all the time in the world, I could shoot a separate angle and get really close up. I just don't have that luxury of time today. With the snow and everything, we're behind in some areas, so I'm trying to keep things light here. So I have a stub nib here on my Conklin All-American. So basically, when it comes to writing with a stub nib, it's not vastly different than writing with any other fountain pen nib. It's just a little more sensitive to kind of the changes in the pen angle and rotation. So really a lot of it is just experimentation, because the way that they're ground can be a little bit different from one pen model to another, and they're all gonna kind of have their sweet spot. The main thing that's important with stub nibs is making sure that the rotation of the pen in your hand is consistent. You know, a lot of people, I've seen this happen with a lot of people writing, even like around here, even my wife sometimes, will rotate the pen in hand unintentionally without even realizing it. And so I like watch and observe, and they're like, oh, this pen is writing kind of dry. And I'm like, well, that's because as you write certain letters, you know, you're rotating that pen pretty hardcore in your hand without even realizing it. Or sometimes, like, you know, people will have the pen in their hand and it's like way over rotated in one direction because they're looking at it, but they're not actually looking at how it's hitting on the page. And it's like, I can literally take the pen and just rotate it in their hand like that, and the pen writes perfect. You know, it can be one of the most frustrating things if you're not like seeing it and looking out for it. So the rotation in your hand is a super important critical factor for any fountain pen in general. A lot of times, especially if you're writing with pen, it's like tends to skip on certain letters, or it tends to write a little dry when you write certain directions or whatever. Check that pen rotation as like numero uno, because that's the easiest thing to check. Try messing with it, rotating it different ways and seeing if it helps at all. That's usually like the go-to, because it literally doesn't require anything else other than just like moving around. But the stub nib, because of kind of what I explained just a minute ago of like it's not a round ball, it's kind of a flat thing. Think about that, like it's relatively flat, so when you're writing with it on the paper and this flat part is touching the paper, all is well. You know, you have a slit in the middle of those tines. Right now I'm showing you like the pen as if you're looking at it head on. Here's your nib, and it's got a slit that's in the middle. That's the capillary action, is having the ink come down the pen. It's coming and touching the paper, and the capillary action is allowing the ink flow through. Everything looks beautiful, great. Problem is, if you have that pen over-rotated in your hand, you're rotating it up like that. Now, because you've got a stub nib, that slit that has the ink in it is now like lifted off the page. So it's not gonna write very well, if at all. So, and it's gonna feel scratchy, because what's gonna happen is as you press down, like here's the paper, as you press down, the tines are gonna go out of alignment, and it's gonna feel scratchy, so it's gonna kind of dig at the page. So like, does that help at all? Hopefully this is helpful to you. But that's what you're dealing with, okay? So you gotta be really sensitive to the rotation of the pen in your hand. But then in general, just like holding the pen around a 45-degree angle, you know, up from the writing surface, and then holding it, you know, at approximately a 45-degree angle. So if like here's your line of writing, you know, if you're looking at the page now, you're writing lines, having the pen at a 45-degree angle, you know, as opposed to like a completely perpendicular angle to your writing line. So like you're writing, there's perpendicular, here is completely horizontal. You want it at about a 45. But even that you can kind of play with a little bit. You know, the further away you go from 45, the more it's actually going to write more like an oblique nib as opposed to an italic or a stub. So just remember like 45 and then 45 and pen rotation. And then from there, you can kind of tweak and adjust and see kind of where the sweet spot is. And then just kind of be sensitive not to press too hard and, you know, stuff like that. That's kind of in general with most fountain pen nibs as it is. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. I really didn't need like a stub nib to show you that. You can't even see the stub. Anyway, so hopefully that helps you out.